Michelle, and today we're going to read a story from the Brothers Grimm. The Turnip. There were once two brothers who both served as soldiers. One of them was rich and the other poor. Then the poor one, to escape from his poverty, took off his soldier's coat and became a farmer. He dug and hoed a bit of land and sowed it with turnip seed. The seed came up, and one turnip grew there, which became large and vigorous, and visibly grew bigger and bigger, and seemed as if it would never stop growing, so that it might have been called the Princess of Turnips, for never was such a one seen before, and never will such a one be seen again. At length it was so enormous that by itself it filled a whole cart, and 2 oxen were required to draw it, and the farmer had not the least idea what he was going to do with the turnip, or whether it would be a fortune to him or a misfortune. At last he thought, if you sell it, what will you get for it that is of any importance? And if you eat it yourself, why, the small turnips would do you just as much good. It would be better to take it to the king and make him a present of it. So he placed it on a cart, harnessed 2 oxen, took it to the palace, and presented it to the king. "What strange thing is this?" said the king. "Many wonderful things have come before my eyes, but never such a monster as this. From what seed can this have sprung, or are you a luck child and have met it by chance?" "Ah, no," said the farmer, "no luck child am I. I am a poor soldier, who, because he could no longer support himself, hung his soldier's coat on a nail and took to farming land. I have a brother who is rich and well known to you, Lord King, but I, because I have nothing, am forgotten by everyone." Then the king felt compassion for him and said, "You shall be raised from your poverty, and shall have such gifts from me that you shall be equal to your rich brother." Then he bestowed on him much gold and lands and meadows and herds, and made him immensely rich, so the wealth of the older brother could not be compared with his. When the rich brother heard what the poor one had gained for himself with one single turnip, he envied him, and thought in every way how he could also get hold of a similar piece of luck. He would, however, set about it in a much wiser way, and took golden horses, and carried them to the king, and made certain the king would give him a much larger present in return, if his brother had gotten so much for one turnip. What would he not carry away with him in return for such beautiful things as these? The king accepted his present, and said he had nothing to give him in return that was more rare and excellent than the great turnip. So the rich man was obliged to put his brother's turnip in a cart and have it taken to his home. When there, he did not know on whom to vent his rage and anger, until bad thoughts came to him, and he resolved to kill his brother. He hired murderers who were to lie in ambush, and then he went to his brother and said, "Dear brother, I know of a hidden treasure. We will dig it up together and divide it between us." The other agreed to this and accompanied him I sit aloft in the sack of wisdom. In a short time have I learned great things. Compared with this all schools are a jest. In a very short time I shall have learned everything, and shall descend wiser than all other men. I understand the stars, and the signs of the zodiac, and the tracks of the winds, the sand of the sea, the healing of illness, and the virtues of all herbs, birds, and stones. If you were once within it, you'd feel what noble things issue forth from the sack of knowledge. The student, when he heard all this, was astonished and said, Blessed be the hour in which I have found you. May not I also enter the sack for a while? He who was above replied as if unwillingly, For a short time I will let you get into it, if you reward me and give me good words, but you must wait an hour longer, for one thing remains which I must learn before I do it. When the student had waited a while, he became impatient and begged to be allowed in at once. His thirst for knowledge was so very great. So he, who was above, pretended at last to give in and said, In order that I may come forth from the house of knowledge, you must let it down by the rope, and then you shall enter it. So the student let the sack down, untied it, and set him free, and then cried, Now draw me up at once, and was about to get into the sack. Halt, said the other, that won't do, and took him by the head and put him upside down into the sack, fastened it, and drew the disciple of wisdom up the tree by the rope. Then he swung him in the air and said, How goes it with you, my dear fellow? Behold, already you feel wisdom coming, and are gaining valuable experience.